Continuing with the winged victory, I have additional restorations for you because we honestly don't know what this used to look like, but we have estimates based upon other works of art. I do want you, particularly if you go to the lower left and see those reconstructions, to have a sense of the scale of this. The figure itself, the body up to the neck, 8 feet. This is a pretty bloody big thing. And it would have been on a carved ship set with boulders and a fountain, making it truly spectacular, dramatic, and instantaneous. This is a comparison that I hope helps you to see that. Both of these are reconstructions. The one on the right, of course, is the Nike of Samothrace, Hellenistic, with great movement running through the body, a diagonal. You can actually see that in the lines of the drapery, as well as in the line of the figure with what we assume was an extended arm. Okay, that figure is incredibly different from the way in which Nike would normally be depicted. On the left, in the classical period, what we're looking at is a replica from the inside of the Parthenon, depicting the goddess Athena, that's her there, as a warrior, and she was goddess of war and wisdom, with her war regalia, and that includes an image of Nike located right to her right side as we look at the goddess. That Nike, as well as the goddess Athena, however, both of them, they remain reserved, they remain in their own space, they're very formal, and they're very remote. That changes with the Hellenistic. Actually, it begins to change in the late classical, and it comes to fulfillment in the Hellenistic. Similar changes occur in the Greek world with depictions of athletes, and we do need to remember that the Greeks are the first to make this an important subject in the works of art that they create. In other words, they're really the ones who turn athletes into heroes. The work in the upper left is from the classical period, and it's the discus thrower. He is shown as an ideal figure, completely in control of his emotions. He's also shown as a winner. We're pretty confident that he's going to be successful. That changes with the Hellenistic. The piece that we're looking at is figure 586 in our textbook, and it shows us the seated boxer. This is a bronze original, so it's a pretty impressive object to have, but it shows us a figure who is no longer perfect, no longer in his prime, and probably no longer a winner. The figure of the seated boxer, the bronze figure, stands a little over 4 feet in his seated position. He is located in a pose that would allow us to stand above him and look down on him. And anytime you have that kind of relationship, automatically it suggests you are dealing with someone who is vulnerable, perhaps even inferior to you. In this case, someone who is past his prime, perhaps someone who has lost in the ring. This is a closer look, which I think makes that clear, and it does continue the quest for naturalism that was such a part of Greek sculptural vocabulary. In this case, we see our boxer. He is older. He's past his prime. He has all of the marks of someone who's fought repeatedly in the ring, sometimes winning, perhaps sometimes losing. And in this case, we think somewhat confused, exhausted, and definitely losing. If you look at his face, you're going to see he has a broken nose. That comes from his past performances. When you have your nose broken, how do you breathe? Will you breathe through your open mouth? And the artist has conveyed that in the face of the seated boxer. The face of the seated boxer also is marked with a series of scars, and I'm hoping you can see those in my slides here, 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 and on the cheek, among others. Those are original to the piece of sculpture, and they're intended to reference the damage that has been done to our boxer over the years of fighting. If you look at the slide on the middle bottom and go right here, you're also going to be able to witness a cauliflower ear, an ear that's been punched so many times it's become puffy and inflated. So we have all kinds of signs that this boxer has perhaps gone past his prime, has been in the ring for a very long time, and has taken punishing blows. The last thing I would offer is that he literally appears to reveal being punch drunk, an expression we use to suggest someone who's been hit in the head, or perhaps hit in the head too many times. He looks a little dazed and a little bit confused. He is no longer a winner. He is also someone who is no longer ideal, perfect, and he is no longer in his prime. Another view that we can see, this may give us a little bit of a sense of what it would be like to be above the figure looking down. Now, I also want to point out he's very muscular. The Greeks are not giving that up. They're just introducing new types, expanding subject matter to give us new range. And in this case, it does include a figure maybe we are intended to feel sorry for. This is a very close set of slides that will give you increased details to make it very clear that the artist is going out of his way to make us feel that this person has been battered, probably repeatedly. In the upper left, if you take a look right here, these are part of the original casting of this piece. And what the artist did was to pour in copper over the bronze so that it would drip down looking like blood. In other words, these are supposed to be fresh cuts. You can also see the old scars. One here, one here, one here, and the one I already pointed out over there. Very, very powerful imagery intended to appeal to our emotions and no longer as ideal overall. In addition to expanding the treatment of subjects that already existed in the Greek world of art, such as the athlete, which we witnessed changing from the remote and controlled classical depictions to the very powerfully emotional images in the Hellenistic, where we actually encounter figures that can be losers. We also introduce whole new subjects. And one of those subjects is sleep. Sleeping figures do not appear in the classical world. And I think the reason for that is when you go to sleep, you let go of reason. You let go of your logic. You enter the world of imagination, of fantasy, and of dreams. The theme of sleep, or the subject of sleep, does, however, become important in the world of the Hellenistic. This is figure 584b. It is located in our textbook, and its title is Sleeping Eros. It's important because in part it's in the mat, so you have an opportunity to see it. Please look at it in the additional video that I have included in our course content. For our purposes right now, I want you to see the theme is sleep. We are now going to another subject, which also depicts the theme of sleep, which is a part of the Hellenistic repertoire. It will be the sleeping satyr. So first of all, I think we need to talk about what a satyr is. A satyr is a follower of the god Dionysus. Dionysus, of course, is the god of wine, the wild forces of nature, and also back in the day of fertility. He probably began as an agricultural deity. As a follower of the god Dionysus, satyrs are associated with their lazy and their lecherous behavior. They have two things that they really crave. One of them is wine, the other is women. I have some images so we can get an introduction to satyrs. This is a Greek vase down at the bottom, and what I'd like you to see is that the satyrs are actually stomping grapes in order to produce wine for themselves. How can we recognize them? Well, usually satyrs are kind of human with goat features, little bitty tail coming out here. And I think we can see some pointy ears that are part of the satyr's MO. The other vice of the satyr is to chase women, and that's what, for your delectation, I have an image in the upper left corner where you can see a satyr is trying to sneak up from behind and grab a lady. You can see his pointy ears, and you can identify him with his ears, but also from his behavior. Let me introduce you to my favorite picture of a satyr because I think it really sums up the nature of satyrs. This isn't in our course time frame. For those of you who are taking art history too, you'll see this again though. It is by an artist whose name is Peter Paul Rubens, who embodies in this painting the nature of satyrs. He extends in his hand a bunch of grapes. That's a reference to wine. And then he looks out at you with these teasing eyes as if he's saying to you, let's misbehave. And that is the essence of a satyr. One reason the satyr is important in the Hellenistic, and also to some extent in the late classical, is that it does signal a change in the emphasis, the importance of Dionysius and his followers, because we enter a period of stress, uncertainty, and one of the things that human nature would suggest is turning to gods that might provide us with a sense of comfort, and Dionysius certainly would do that. This is the sleeping satyr, a figure 585 in our textbook that you can all find. It is also a pretty good example of the culmination of what the Greeks could achieve in the direction of naturalism because it's an incredibly convincing image. It is highly naturalistic in terms of a study of the human form. Also, perhaps the psychological side of drunkenness, because what we have here is a satyr asleep, and again, this is the subject of sleep, but it's not restful sleep. It's the sleep of a satyr who has had far too much wine to consume. He's plopped down his panther skin. You can see a little bit of it, a little bit tough to find in my slide. This is some of it over here on a rock and just gone to sleep. The implication is we're in the woods, the realm of nature and the realm of Dionysius and satyrs. His brow is wrinkled. He seems to be twisting and turning in sleep. It is not a calm and deep sleep, but it's the troubled sleep of someone who has had too much to drink. The image also is not like earlier male nude figures that we've looked at from the ancient Greek world. When we get to the period of the Hellenistic, it is also acceptable to create images that are more sensual. You will never look at an early 5th century, for example, BCE classical work depicting a male nude and describe it as sensual. But by the time you get to the Hellenistic, in particular the pose of our figure does in fact suggest a quality of eroticism. We can identify this as a satyr, although he's largely human looking. If we go down here, we can see the satyr tail. So we know, in fact, that we're dealing with a satyr. When we look at our satyr also, you can almost visualize the dreams that he's having from his state of drunkenness. This particular piece is also an important one because it was restored by a very important 17th century sculptor whose name was Bernini. And again, you will encounter Bernini in art history too. One of the world's great sculptors coming in and I think giving Michelangelo, in terms of ratings, a run for his money. So Bernini was pretty good. This piece of sculpture was discovered in the 17th century. It was damaged and Bernini was called in to restore it. This is what Bernini did. Let me read from my notes. He replaced the right leg, the left knee and foot, the left forearm, and he pulled up and spread out the right leg more than it originally was. That means Bernini made our satyr sexier than the Greeks intended. What we think Bernini was doing was reflecting 17th century ideas about the satyr and his potential for sensual behavior and his ominousness, his dark side, temporarily being subdued by sleep.